You know, it almost seems redundant to say breaking news anymore because it's just constantly always happening. Every single time I sit down and I plan something to talk about, it's like, breaking news. Donald Trump just ended Vladimir Zelenskyy. Breaking news. The Ukraine is over party. All these things that are happening constantly, every single day, every minute of every day. It's a little dizzying. I'll be honest with you. My head has been spinning a little bit, as I'm sure yours has too. But nothing really, I think, compares to what happened today, early this morning. Donald Trump has been very busy. Donald Trump woke up in the morning. He got out his phone. He took to Truth Social, and the first thing he did was end Lindsey Graham's ridiculous budget initiative that calls for funding to Ukraine for like the next, 15 years. And then he basically ended Vladimir Zelensky's reign of terror in Ukraine by calling him a dictator and basically calling for elections and shutting down all of these people. And here's the thing about Donald Trump. People hate Donald Trump because he's right. And nobody likes anybody who's right and says it. That's the thing. You can be right and keep your mouth shut and maybe you have some friends left. But if you're right and you tell everybody you were right, then they don't like you at all. And that's what's happening with Canada. It's what's happening with Mexico. It's what's happening with most of Europe. It's what's happening with Ukraine. All of these people all over the world are realizing that Donald Trump is right and that he's saying it. And that's where they really get upset. And Donald Trump is not holding. He's everywhere, by the way. Yesterday, he and Elon Musk sat down with Sean Hannity for an interview, which was interspersed among the monologues that Sean Hannity was performing. Apparently, a lot of people online are not a fan of Sean Hannity's interview style. Sean Hannity, he kind of does this thing where he talks to you. He asks you a very lengthy question. He usually uses some aspect of his own life to introduce the topic. And then while you're answering, he talks over you and then interrupts you to ask you and tell you another segment about his personal history. I don't know. You know what? I didn't watch it live. I just watched the clips. And so I didn't get the full impact. But people who watched it live apparently not very happy. They prefer the Tucker Carlson style, where Tucker Carlson asks a question and then lets the person he asked the question just talk for an hour. Joe Rogan, very similar. Joe Rogan will talk for 30 minutes, then he'll ask a question, and then you won't hear Joe Rogan again for 2 hours. That's basically that's their interview style, and it seems to be working with for some people. But we'll play you some of the highlights, some of the clips from that as well. And it's just like a hodgepodge today. Scott Bessent was at the Treasury Department with Brett Baer, and they were talking a little bit about what's going on at the Treasury. They were talking about opening the Treasury back up and forcing everyone to come back to work. They were talking about being gay. Scott Bessent was not. Brett Baer was really, really into the fact that Scott Bessent was gay. He kept asking him about it, and Scott Bessent was like, "Look, dude, I'm not a DEI hire. I was hired because I'm the best man for the job." And anyway, we're all over the place today. But it's good that you're here, because you're going to get a lot of information in the next hour and 20 minutes or however long I happen to prattle on. But before we do any of that, I want you to make sure that you subscribe to the show. Make sure you hit subscribe, set those notifications, because like I said, it's always breaking news and there's always something happening and there's always something popping off. And we want to make sure that when it does pop off, you get the notification so that you're aware of it. And so that you can enjoy and be informed and entertained immediately whenever we post, whenever we post anything, which could be at any time. Also, don't forget, later on today, the Kayetriot Club. If you're not a supporter yet of the Kayetriot Club, pardon me, then we would love for you to do that for a couple of reasons. If you support the Kayetriot Club, then you support the show. And with the more members we have, the more amazing things we can do here with the show, the more we can bring you fantastic, interviews and experiences, and we can upgrade our equipment and we can travel around to various different places. And it's just an all around better experience. So, and plus we have, it's not just, hey, give us money. We're going to give you something in return. And membership does have its privileges, much like with American Express. You get access to our exclusive after party post show performance, which will be happening after post show. You get stickers. We have an exclusive sticker pack for members only, and we have a 25% discount at the Mark Kaye shop for life. So as long as you're a member, you can get 25% off of your purchases at the Mark Kaye shop. And that is, of course, when you join the Kayetriot Club at kayetriots.com. Just subscribe, you go to locals and, become any level of supporter you want. If you want to be an annual supporter, great. If you want to be a monthly supporter, that works too. We just need all the support we can get because we are an independent news organization. And by news, I mean, I don't know if I'd call us a news, but you get the drift. Anyway, let's start with the big news today. Where is it? Here it is. Donald Trump, just before showtime, posted on Truth Social a lengthy takedown, a roasting, if you will, a pimp slapping, some may call it, of Vladimir Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine. And this has been brewing for a while. This has really been brewing for a while. I expected something like this to happen for, over the last couple of days, because Donald Trump has been working diligently with folks in Russia. He sent Marco Rubio to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to meet with the Saudi Arabians and the Russians and sit down and start talking about some kind of peace accord. He wants the peace in Ukraine to begin immediately. He wants the fighting to end immediately. He's not going to send any more money out there. We've already had that conversation. So what's happening is Donald Trump goes on to Truth. Well, okay, let's back it up a little bit. So yesterday, Donald Trump was at Mar-a-Lago, and he was asked a question about peace in Ukraine. And Donald Trump, when he was in Mar-a-Lago, had this to say about peace. Hold on, I gotta find the clip. Had this to say about peace in Ukraine.
I want to see peace. Look, you know why I want? Because I don't want all these people killed anymore. I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad. But with all of that being said, look, it is what it is. When I left, there was no chance that this could have happened. But it happened because we had incompetent leadership at many different levels. But when you see what's taken place in Ukraine with millions of people killed, including the soldiers, millions of people killed, a big percentage of their cities knocked down to the ground. I don't know how anybody even lives there. When they say they took a poll and Zelensky's at 4%, who's living there? It's hard to believe that people live there. Their cities are being knocked down. And this is something that would have never happened. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't happen. It was never going to happen. Go ahead.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. That's all I could think of when he goes, their cities are being knocked down. Their cities are being knocked down and their people are being killed and they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. And who are they polling anyway? Who's even living in Ukraine? There's millions of people in Ukraine still. Sure, a lot of refugees, but there's millions of people still living in Ukraine. And yeah, it's not the best place to live these days. It hasn't been for the last 3 years. But Donald Trump, look, he's a truth teller. He's going to tell the truth. The Europeans are complaining that they weren't invited. Vladimir Zelenskyy is complaining he wasn't invited to the peace talks in Saudi Arabia. The Europeans are complaining because the Europeans were not invited to the peace talks in Saudi Arabia. The EU is sitting there for years now whining that the United States of America has to send more money and that we've got to add Ukraine to NATO. Okay, what if we end the war? What if you, instead of complaining about adding Ukraine to NATO, what if you just said, hey, you know what? We should end the war. Why don't we all get together and do that? Why don't we as a continent, because again, Donald Trump, he says this all the time, we're not even there. We're way over here in North America. We're dealing with Canada and Mexico taking advantage of us. We're dealing with, all this other stuff that we got. We got an illegal alien invasion. Half of South America and Latin America is trying to come into our border and take all of our assets and live on our streets and in our hotels and all that other junk. We got to deal with that problem. You guys are in Europe. You deal with it. France, Germany, England, Austria. I mean, you're all right there. Italy, just deal with it. Figure it out. You guys, you don't want Russia and Ukraine fighting. Fine. You had 3 years and you did nothing. So don't come whining to me now that you're not allowed at the table. Guy in Germany was literally crying the other day because Donald Trump's taken charge. And Zelenskyy, not happy to be told that he was at 4%. Vladimir Zelenskyy took this personally. Here's Donald Trump trying to end a war. You know, all we hear from Vladimir Zelenskyy is, oh, the brutality and the murder, and the people are fighting strong, but we're weak. We need help. We need forces, reinforcement. We need blah, blah, blah. But we don't ever hear, let's end the war. Or we never hear, you know what, Donald Trump, it is time. You are right. Let us end the war. Let me do what I can. You don't ever hear that. You just hear complaining that Donald Trump is mean and lying. And now what really got Zelenskyy mad was that Donald Trump said he was polling at 4%. He said Vladimir Zelensky's polling at 4%. Zelenskyy not happy. Here's what he said about that. First of all, I never comment on the things because I think that commenting on the ratings for elections is, hold on, let me go back and see what he said. For yourself or others, political competition, elections are going on. We don't have that. This morning there was a poll. In principle, I know, I am aware, but I do not comment on it officially. But since such a time has come, we will take the initiative into our own hands. First of all, today I received 57% of trust. I heard 57+% of various people, I guess, social questions. So if someone wants to know me right now, then right now, wants to defeat me right now, then right now it will not work. I would say so. Secondly, since we are already talking about 4%, we have seen this disinformation. We understand that it comes from Russia. We understand that this, and talk faster, come on. We have evidence that these figures are discussed between America and Russia. That is unfortunately President Trump, with great respect to him as a leader of the people, which we very much respect. The American people who constantly support us, unfortunately, live in this disinformation space. And the question is not even what kind of support I have, but the question is what is important. Those ratings that we pay attention to. The number one question today is how to protect yourself from attacks. I think this is the number one question. So basically what he did was he went on TV or wherever that was, and he said Donald Trump is peddling misinformation, Russian misinformation. What Vladimir Zelenskyy is doing is he's using the Democrats' own playbook. He's using the Democrat playbook because he's mad at Donald Trump. So Donald Trump says he's polling at 4%. He's unpopular. They're not even having elections over there because he called martial law. And Vladimir Zelenskyy says this is Russian disinformation. It's the same thing they tried to pin on Donald Trump in the very first impeachment. And it didn't work then, and it's not going to work now. And Donald Trump's not having it. Donald Trump does not like when you call him a liar, or when you call him stupid, or when you say he's shilling for Vladimir Putin. Anybody who knows Donald Trump knows that Donald Trump does not approve of that, and he will retaliate. And so Donald Trump did on Truth Social this morning when he wrote, think of it. A modestly successful comedian, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed while the United States will get nothing back. Why didn't sleepy Joe Biden demand equalization in that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us? We have a big, beautiful ocean as separation. On top of this, Zelenskyy admits that half of the money we sent him is missing. He refuses to have elections, is very low in Ukrainian polls, and the only thing he was good at was playing Biden like a fiddle. A dictator without elections, Zelenskyy better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump and the Trump administration can do. Biden never tried, Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelenskyy probably wants to keep the gravy train going. I love Ukraine, but Zelenskyy has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions have unnecessarily died, and so it continues. ... That's 5 periods of ellipses. By the way, at the end of that, look, this is Donald Trump this is Donald Trump being 100% accurate. It's called Truth Social for a reason. And he's like, look, the money is gone. Biden got no concessions. Biden got no guarantees. Europe is taking advantage of the situation. Vladimir Zelenskyy says half the money's missing and he doesn't know where it is. Meanwhile, his wife's ordering really expensive cars and his generals are driving around in Ferraris through the Spanish, ocean side. It has been one of the, in Donald Trump's opinion here, one of the largest con jobs ever perpetrated on the United States of America. He did not have to go into this war. He never acknowledged the war, never tried to settle the war. He just saw the opportunity to get billions of dollars from the United States of America. And now Donald Trump's saying it's over. I'm not going to give you any more money. And I want concessions. And if you go out there and badmouth me, this is the way it's going to end. JD Vance is also out there saying, look, I don't know what Vladimir Zelenskyy is thinking, but you don't badmouth Donald Trump when you can't say, hey, look, I need your help. I need more money. I'll be gone without you, and then badmouth somebody on the international stage. JD Vance warns Zelenskyy he will regret badmouthing Trump and condemns his atrocious response to peace talks. Vice President JD Vance on Wednesday warned the Ukrainian president against attacking President Donald Trump, saying that badmouthing him in public would only backfire. The extraordinary language on both sides comes at a critical time in the war between Ukraine and Russia as Trump pushes for a speedy resolution. The idea that Zelenskyy is going to change the president's mind by badmouthing him in public media, everyone who knows the president will tell you that is an atrocious way to deal with this administration, said Vance during an exclusive interview in his West Wing office. At the same time, Trump weighed in with his own attack on Truth Social, a dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. I mean, if you think about it, if you don't have elections, and you may remember last year or 2 years ago, I don't even remember what it was, there was supposed to be an election in Ukraine, but they called martial law and they were like, oh, we're fighting this war and it's terrible and yada, yada, yada. And so Vladimir Zelenskyy said there's no election. He actually came to the United States and said, look, if you want us to have an election, he went to Great Britain, to the U.S., he went to all of his allies and said, look, if you want to give us an election, you've got to give us more money because we don't even have money for an election. If you want us to be a democratic state, a democratically run country, if you want the people to decide who the leaders are, then you've got to pony up some more cash because we are out. We need money. Everything about it was money with him, whether it was an election or battles or fighting or this or that. And the United States at that point, I think, said no. So Vladimir Zelenskyy said, okay, no election. I'll just stay in power. It doesn't seem like there's a downside to him other than the fact that he didn't get money. But let's face it. He's got so much money as it is. But again, this is a guy who obviously hasn't been paying attention, or maybe it's not that he hasn't been paying attention, but obviously he hasn't been reading his own, or he's been believing his own press. And that's dangerous because when you believe your own press, when you believe your own media, then you're going to get a big head and an ego, and you're going to think that you're going to get too big for your fatigues. You know, in Vladimir Zelensky's in Vladimir Zelensky's position. But basically what happens is Donald Trump does not ever take well any kind of public bad-mouthing or anybody insulting him. That's not the way to get on his good side. It's not the way to get him to come around and come to your defense. And so this war in Ukraine is going to end. And here's the thing, Donald Trump will decide. Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Vladimir Putin, they're going to decide how the war is going to end. Because right now, Vladimir Putin is outmanning Ukraine. He's outgunning Ukraine. Yes, they've lost lives on both sides of the aisle. They've lost lives on both sides of the border. But at the same time, Vladimir Putin is a much more well-armed, well-equipped leader than Vladimir Zelenskyy. So if Vladimir Zelenskyy wants the help of the United States of America, he's got to cede to Donald Trump's opinion and he has to cede to Donald Trump's ability to negotiate a settled peace. If he doesn't, then Donald Trump will abandon him and take whatever minerals and precious metals we can get to recoup our expenses. And, and Russia's going to take some territory. But at where we are right now, the only path to peace is with Donald Trump and Putin coming up with some kind of, I guess you would say palatable settlement on either side. And Vladimir Zelenskyy is actually standing in the way. As far as his approval rating, I mean, I'm not a Ukrainian. I don't live there. I don't see every single day what it's like. But from way over here, I'll just say I'll just say I don't approve. I do approve, by the way, of a lot of other things that Donald Trump is doing with the help of his cabinet. His cabinet is, I'll tell you what, this guy put together a really fantastic cabinet, whether it's Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, Marco Rubio, whether it's SecDef, aka Pete Hegseth, whether it's Howard Lutnick, all these people that Donald Trump managed to put together, who he quilted together. It really, the most amazing cabinet I think we've ever seen in human history, probably will go down in history as the best cabinet ever. But I mean, all these people are just working diligently. And Elon Musk isn't even really, I guess, technically in the cabinet, but he is one of Donald Trump's appointees. He was put in charge of Doge. And I'm really excited because apparently Doge is finding so much waste. And Doge is finding so much, it's fraud, it's waste, fraud, and abuse. They're finding so much waste, fraud, and abuse in the government that they are scraping back and clawing back hundreds of billions of dollars, could be even trillions at the end of the day. And there's a news story out, which I'm really excited about. There is a guy named James Fishback. And James Fishback, here it is. Let me pull this up. James Fishback, I don't know who he is. He's from Arizona. That's all I know. He put together a proposal. And he said President Trump and Elon Musk should announce a Doge dividend, a tax refund check sent to every taxpayer, funded exclusively with a portion of the total savings delivered by Doge. So he put together this whole long proposal. He wrote it up, a case for the Doge dividend. James Fishback, CEO, Azoria. Few in America probably knew precisely what to expect from Doge. The early perceived turbulence around leadership, the uncertainty around legal structure, and the lack of precedent for such a bold initiative created a sense of show me with Doge. Just a month into President Trump's second term, Doge is delivering, full stop. So here's what then he goes through how Doge is working, what they're finding, yada, yada, yada. Pardon me. And then he says, sharing the benefits of cost cutting with the taxpayer. President Trump's Doge dividend creates a mechanism to cut the taxpayer in on the benefits of spending cuts. By pre-committing to pay out a specified percentage of savings, taxpayers now benefit directly from savings cuts. With the Doge dividend, every tax-paying American stands to benefit from Doge. As such, they have every incentive to report every instance of government waste, fraud, and abuse that they encounter. The incentive will massively increase the surface area for Doge to find opportunities. So what he's suggesting is the prospect of a $5,000 Doge dividend in 2026 will incentivize many to re-enter the labor force in 2025 in order to be eligible for the Doge dividend. Low labor force participation is throttling U.S. economic growth, and the Doge dividend will provide a powerful incentive to begin reversing this trend. So this guy's out there and he's suggesting $5,000 to everybody who goes to work and pays taxes. And if you do that, then he thinks that there's going to be a great initiative for people to go back to work, and it will incentivize them to continue to report waste, fraud, and abuse to the government, to Doge, so that they'll get their money. And Elon Musk, I guess, read this and replied back, "We'll check with the president." So then, of course, the internet went wild. They're like, oh my God, Elon Musk is taking the Doge dividend to President Donald Trump. We're all going to be rich. We're all going to get $5,000 back in our taxes, which I don't know if it's per household or what, but I guess if you file jointly, maybe you just get $5,000 per couple. If you file separately, you get $5,000. Who knows what is? I think we're in the early stages, but it only makes sense. And it's the kind of thing that Donald Trump is known for. You may remember in the tax break in Donald Trump's first administration, the tax breaks, the tax cuts were given back to large corporations, and many of those large corporations doled those out with the people that work there. They shared them with their employees, at least the good ones did. They cut checks back to the people. And that was how Donald Trump was able to put the money back in the pockets of hardworking Americans when he cut taxes on corporations. And everybody said he was going to screw the little guy. Oh, look at all these corporate tax cuts on big corporations. Well, now they're talking about direct payments of $5,000 to anybody who helps Doge the government. They're trying to make everyone realize Doge is a good thing. It's cutting out waste, fraud, and abuse. And we're not really sure why anyone. In fact, Scott Bessent was talking to Brett Baer, And he said, look, anybody who's against this whole Doge thing, you really have to wonder, you really have to stop and ask yourself, why would anybody be against it? Is it because they're the perpetrators of the waste, fraud, and abuse? Probs.
This kind of fear mongering doesn't help anybody, but it tells me that people are worried that, that they're part of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
And you think there's going to be a ton more?
I think when I came in, we all think there's waste, there's abuse. I think there may be some real fraud here, Brett.
I think there may be real fraud. There's waste, there's fraud, abuse. I think there may be real fraud. They're not just going after these organizations. They're not just cutting all the fat. They're not just saying, hey, you know what? We got to get rid of all this crap we're spending money on. We got to weed out all these social security checks we're sending to people who are 5,000 years old. But there's probably fraud going on. And if there's fraud going on, you know that Donald Trump and his DOJ, they're going to go after it. They will 100% go after it because, well, that's what they do. Lisa Murkowski was asked about Doge in the hallways of the Senate. Listen to what Lisa Murkowski from Alaska said when asked about Doge and whether or not this was a appropriate way to treat government workers.
Doesn't demonstrate much due process, but even more to it, it doesn't show respect for those who have worked hard as federal citizens. I'm going to go in and be listening to you.
She said, first of all, she said it doesn't show much due process. Due process? Like when you commit a crime and you get due process, is that what you're talking about? She's literally saying here, it doesn't show due process. These people are losing their jobs. They're getting fired. They're cutting all this waste. The USAID has been totally dismantled and destroyed. And there's no due process. It sounds to me like she's saying, look, these people are guilty of something, but they at least have the right to defend themselves. And then she says it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful? We're not showing a lot of disrespect to a lot of people who may have been bilking the government for years. What about this guy that Donald Trump loves to talk about who had a 3-month contract with the government and there was a change in policy or there was a change in leadership or something and they forgot about his 3-month contract. So they paid him for 20 years. And the guy didn't call up and say, hey, do you know you're paying me every month for 20 years on a 90-day contract that expired 20 years ago? No, he cashed the checks. There are people, and we talked about this yesterday, and Donald Trump actually talked about it in Mar-a-Lago. He pulled up the same document we went over on this show. And he said, let me explain to you the kind of fraud, the kind of abuse of the system, the social security system we have here. Let me just read off to you some of these people's ages who are not only receiving, but accepting Social Security, and nobody seems to think they're abusing the system.
But look at this, from 90 to 99, Social Security, 6,054,000 people. Well, that's okay. Maybe that's possible. 90 to 99, maybe it's possible. It's a lot of people, though, at that. But people that live to 100 to 109, 4,734,000. Wow, that's a lot. That means over 100 years old. They're 4 million people. I don't know too many. I know people that are doing great in their 90s, but not too many people over 100. But over 120, from 120 years old, people that are 120 years old up to 129, 3,472,000 people. Wow. That can't possibly be, because the record is like, I think it's one person, a woman, lived to 127, but they have 3,472. Okay, but now we're going really in. People from 130 years old to 139-year-old, 3,936,000. Wow.
Wow. Look at that. 3 million people, 130 to 139 years old. The record, Donald Trump said, there was one woman lived to be 127 years old. Look at this. There's people on this roster. There's 3 million of them who are 10 years older than the oldest woman in the entire world, in the history of the world. And Donald Trump's just like, look, this is what I'm talking about here. We're trying to rid the American taxpayer of this kind of waste, this kind of fraud, this kind of abuse. Why is anybody upset about it? Why would anybody clearly be angry unless you're the 139-year-old, quote unquote, who's receiving the payment?
I wonder if people are getting paid with all this. I mean, are these checks? And that's what we're checking right now. People from 140 years old to 149 years old, 3,542,000, 140 years old and beyond. Now we're really going, because we're looking to break the record by 25 years. People from 150 years old to 159 years old, 1,345,000. These are in the, by the way, these are in the computer files. This is what they do well. They're super. I asked Elon, who are these Doge people? He said they're super brilliant computer people and they love the country.
Yeah, they're super brilliant computer people. They love the country. Apparently, they dress like crap, though. That's what Elon Musk and Sean Hannity, they sat down with Donald Trump, and Sean Hannity did an interview with both Elon and Trump together. First time in history, I think, that a president and like his friend sat down for an interview with anyone. But they talked about the Doge people, and Donald Trump said they're super smart, they're high IQ, but they dress like crap.
With his 100 geniuses, he's got some very brilliant young people working for him that dress much worse than him, actually.
Yeah,
they dress in just T-shirts. You wouldn't know they have 180 IQ.
Wait a minute. So
so these kids show up. They're dressed in, I love that he goes, they dress even worse than he does. Anyway, Elon's, yeah, that's true. They do. They show up in T-shirts, but they're geniuses. They know what they're doing. They know what they're looking for. They walk into the Treasury Department. They fire up the computer. They run their little program, and they go, wow, look at all this waste. They go into the USAID, and they go, wow, look at all this fraud. They go into the Social Security Administration. They go, wow, look at all this abuse. And that's who these kids are.
They're finding things like that. They're finding things far worse than that. And they're finding billions, and it will be hundreds of billions of dollars worth of fraud. I say waste and abuse, but fraud, waste, and abuse. And he's doing an amazing job. And he attracts a young, very smart type of person. I call them high IQ individuals, and they are. They're very high IQ and high IQ. And when they go in to see the people and talk to these people, you know, the people think they're going to pull it over. They don't. These guys are smart, and they love the country. You know, there's a certain something. But he uses the word care. So people have to care.
They have to care. They go in, they care about the country, they love the country, they're using their intellect, they're using their computer skills to help the country. This is all this is. All Doge is, okay? Doge and these Doge operatives and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and cutting out the waste, fraud, and abuse, this is digital patriotism is what it is. These are patriots. These are people who, I mean, if you think about it, the same American spirit that was used to fight the British back in the 1700s to liberate the country, the same spirit that was used by farmers and merchants and blacksmiths and whatever else, whatever skills that those people had back then, they utilized, they strategized, and they fought and they won independence for our country. And nowadays, we have a new battle. We have a battle that's brewing, and we're fighting it. And we're fighting it against fraud, waste, and abuse. And we have people with skills, computer skills. They have skills with spreadsheets, whatever it is. And they're patriotically fighting for you and for me, and to save our country and to keep our country from going bankrupt, because that's exactly where we're headed. And this interview was very interesting. Donald Trump, Sean Hannity asked about their relationship and said, how did this whole thing start? What was it that really led to the beginning of this relationship? And again, it was Elon Musk answering the call of the president of the United States, or I guess president-elect of the United States, in a time of crisis, and unflinching in his desire to help his fellow Americans. We're, of course, talking about the folks in North Carolina after the Hurricane Helene devastation that left them without any communications. Donald Trump got on the horn and said, Elon, I don't know what Starlink is, but we need it. And Elon delivered.
Well, I respect him. I've always respected him. I never knew that he was right on certain things, and I'm usually pretty good at this stuff. He did Starlink. He did things that were so advanced, and nobody knew what the hell they were. I can tell you in North Carolina, they had no communication. They were wiped out. Those people were, they had rivers in between. Land that never saw water, all of a sudden there was a river and a vicious, like rapids. People were dying all over. They had no communication. They said, Elon Musk. They didn't really know I knew him. And I said, yeah. He said, could you get Starlink? It's like the first time I ever heard of it. I said, what's Starlink? A communication system that's unbelievable.
I have it.
Yeah. And he said, I called him and I said, listen, they really need it. And he got like thousands of units of this communication, and it saved a lot of lives. He got it immediately, and you can't get it. I mean, you have to wait a long time to get it. But he got it to him immediately, and I said, that's pretty amazing, and I didn't even know he had it.
Yeah, I imagine Elon Musk can get Starlink. If anyone can get 1,000 Starlink units, it's Elon Musk. You and I have to wait. They're like the Cybertruck. If Elon Musk wants a Cybertruck, I'm pretty sure he can get one. Someone else will have to wait a little bit longer, but Elon Musk will get his Cybertruck ASAP. And that's what Donald Trump said. He goes, look, I needed somebody who could help quickly, who didn't ask questions, who saw the situation and said, okay, this is what we need to do. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the obvious, doing the obvious. So many people in government, they do dumb things. They do things that are not obvious. This, to me, is obvious. When you become president of the United States, you go into every agency and you audit it, much like you would if you were CEO of a corporation. And you go in and say, all right, these people, we don't need them. Obviously, they're wasting our money. Obviously, they're redundant. All these dead people on the Social Security roll, these dead people should not be receiving Social Security. Obviously. Why is my thing? Hang on. Why is Lisa Murkowski talking again? Pause. Obviously, they shouldn't be getting Social Security. And it just is. He's taking the obvious position. The penny. Brett Baer asked Scott Bessent about the penny. And Scott Bessent is like, yeah, we're getting rid of the penny, dude. Obviously.
President Trump wants to make the penny extinct, and that's part of the cost savings. Cost about 3 cents to make 1 cent, and even in Washington, that math doesn't work.
So it's going soon.
It's going soon.
I mean, it's an obvious solution to a problem. So why have we been making pennies for so long that cost more than pennies actually make? Because that's just the way we've done it. Well, if we want to start saving money, why don't we stop spending 3 pennies on 1 penny? I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing the obvious things to make America great again. And that's why the left can't. That's why the left is freaking out. That's why they can't stand it. That's why the Europeans can't stand it. They hate that Donald Trump is doing things to make America great again, because they know that it's only a matter of time before Donald Trump gets to them. He's already started with the USAID, but what's going to happen is there's going to be an audit of all the money we spend overseas. There's going to be an audit of NATO. Doge will be into NATO next. They're already into our Defense Department. If you don't think that the waste and the fraud and the abuse in the Defense Department has been going on for decades, I mean, come on. They're gonna weed out all of the payments to our European allies that Donald Trump seems are redundant or thinks are unnecessary. It's really going to be devastating for a lot of leaders. They're going to have to actually start leading themselves. They're actually going to have to start figuring out a way to protect their own countries. And they're going to have to take back power for the people of their country instead of just calling us up and saying, hey, we need more, we need more, we need more. Donald Trump saying, you know what, we're going to put America first for a while. And that's how it's going to be. It really is fantastic. Donald Trump was talking about all kinds of. He talked about the peace in Ukraine. He talked about the waste, fraud, and abuse in all of these departments. He talked a little bit about this whole thing with Kristi Noem and with Tom Homan and Kristi Noem. And it's interesting because Donald Trump, again, he just kind of speaks extemporaneously. And, you always think he has this great relationship with somebody, or he thinks this way about somebody. But it's really interesting when you piece together and stitch together the nuggets of information that he gives you. And he said something really interesting about making Kristi Noem the Homeland Security Secretary, which I thought was fascinating.
And we have a great guy, Tom Homan, and he is doing so incredibly. You saw the numbers, they're now like 96%.
95%.
He is a phenomenal guy. And Kristi Noem is doing an unbelievable job. And he wanted her. He said, she's so tough. And I said, I don't think of her as that way. She's very nice. He said, no, she's so tough. And she is. I see with the horses. She's riding the horse. Let's go. She's great. But the team we have is really unbelievable.
Yeah, so Donald Trump goes, I don't see Kristi Noem as tough. I guess he didn't hear she shot a puppy. I mean, that's a tough cookie right there. But he goes, no, Tom Homan wanted her. And I said, all right. This is exactly what leadership is. Donald Trump says to Tom Homan, because he was first. The first person that Donald Trump put in his cabinet was Susie Wiles. He said, Susie Wiles is going to be my chief of staff. Makes perfect sense, because once you have a chief of staff in place, then you can work on the staff. You put in the chief of staff, and then you start working on the rest of the staff. And then it was Tom Homan as the border czar. And the border czar was before Pete Hegseth. The border czar was before Kristi Noem. And so Tom Homan obviously comes to Donald Trump and says, Kristi Noem's the one that we need. Kristi Noem should be in charge of Homeland Security. Kristi Noem's tough. And Donald Trump says, really? And Tom Homan goes, oh, yeah. And he goes, all right, you can have her. Because Donald Trump listens. He asks. He gets information. He coordinates with his team. He's not a dictator. He's not someone out there saying, you know what? I would love to make Kristi Noem Homeland Security, but I promised so-and-so the job because they gave me $4 million for my campaign. Or I promised so-and-so the job so that they'd drop out of the race. The only reason Pete Buttigieg became the worst transportation secretary in the history of our country is because they needed him to drop out of the race. He was way too popular. He was tied in Iowa with Bernie Sanders. He was winning other delegates in other states. In New Hampshire, Joe Biden was flailing. Joe Biden didn't win a single one of the first primaries. It wasn't until South Carolina that he managed to win a primary, because they got James Clyburn to go out there and tell all the black people, you better vote for Joe Biden. And so he rallied all the African-American voters in South Carolina, and Joe Biden finally won one. And then they went to Pete Buttigieg and said, look, dude, we know you're young. We know you're gay. We know you want to be president someday, but what if we need you to drop out, because we need Joey in there. Joey B's got to be the president. We know that it's going to be, we've got some things planned, but we need you to drop out. What if we make you transportation secretary? And then that can be like your jumping off point. Then you can do something else after that. And they sold him a bag of goods, and he went in there, and then he realized, oh my God, I actually have to do this job. And he was horrible at it. He's like, I got to go do this job. I have to show up in East Palestine. I don't know how to do that. There's a blockage at the ports that I have to unravel. I don't know how to do that. Bridges are collapsing all over. I don't know what I'm doing. All I've been is mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and that place has a pothole problem. You guys made me the transportation secretary. You could have made me secretary of something else, but no, you wanted me out of the race. Donald Trump was not playing favors or returning favors with anybody. He just said, all right, you want Kristi Noem? You got her. Doug Burgum for Secretary of the Interior, great guy. Howard Lutnick for Commerce, amazing. Scott Bessent, as we talked about earlier, stellar choice. And these people have put together, like I said, an amazing cabinet that is doing amazing things and will continue to do amazing things. By the way, Scott Bessent said that Donald Trump's peace plan, not only for Ukraine but for the Middle East, should win him the Nobel Peace Prize. And in a perfect, fair world, it would. However, we know we don't live in a perfectly fair world.
Are you optimistic that there is going to be an end game here, that the negotiation works?
The plan that I've seen that President Trump has, I think he could win the Nobel Peace Prize for this. If it were fairly awarded, I think in a year he should get it, from what I've seen.
In a year. If it were fairly awarded, which it's not, Donald Trump should get it. Donald Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, I believe, 3 times. He didn't win it any of those 3 times. Barack Obama was nominated once while starting wars all over the world, and he won. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure who's picking the Nobel Peace Prize winners, but I know it's not Republicans or Donald Trump supporters. Speaking of which, CNN continues to be, I guess, dumbfounded or shocked or surprised beyond belief that there are more Republicans now than Democrats. They're shocked to find out that Donald Trump's popularity continues to rise, and they are just flabbergasted that the Democrat Party continues to flail and flounder after Donald Trump's big win. Here's Harry Enton with the latest numbers about Donald Trump and his overall approval ratings and the aggregate among Democrats and Republicans.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party has changed the electorate. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at party identification, Democrats versus Republicans. You go back to 2017, 5 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. You go to 2021 when Joe Biden was starting out, look at that, 6 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. But look at what's happened in February of 2025. Look at this. Republicans, there are more Republicans in the electorate than there are Democrats. Republican +2. So Donald Trump and the Republicans have remade the electorate. They've turned some people over from being Democrats or independents to become Republicans. New folks have entered the electorate who are more Republican leaning. And so when you combine that with the fact that Republicans are really, really behind Donald Trump, all of a sudden you get a winning recipe whereby you break the normal rules of politics and give Donald Trump that positive net approval rating when he had pretty much a consistently negative one in term number one. As I said at the beginning, he's copying Frank Sinatra, doing it my way.
That's weird. Harry ended very excited, by the way. He said Donald Trump has changed the electorate. He's changed the electorate for the country. And that is true. Look at that. It was +5 points for Democrats, +6 in 2021 when Joe Biden took office. Now it's +2. That's a differentiation of -8. That's almost double digits, -8 for Democrats. Now, when you think about it, yes, Donald Trump has the ability to do that to the country, but you have to put a lot of that on Joe Biden's shoulders. A lot of folks looked at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and said, if this is what being a Democrat's all about, count me out. If this is what being a Democrat is, as a Democrat, I have to vote for either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, no, thank you. I will be exiting stage left and entering stage right. See what I did there? Because you exit stage left, enter. Yeah, okay. But anyway, that's and a lot of that. Yes, there was a lot of hard work done by Republicans. Laura Trump, Michael Whatley, our buddy Scott Pressler, who almost single-handedly, I mean, he had a lot of help. He had a lot of people working with him, but changed the face of Pennsylvania politics and continues to work diligently to flip Pennsylvania red. He's got New Jersey in his sights next. He wants to do to New Jersey what he did to Pennsylvania, and he wants to make sure that these people know that the era of the Democrat dominance is over. The era of Democrat dominance has ended, and that the Republicans are back in charge, that America understands that Republican values are American values, that America understands that conservative values are American values, and that the Constitution isn't just something fun you get to see when you go to Washington, D.C. and hang out at the archives. It's actually the blueprint for our country, the blueprint for our nation, the keystone with which our republic was built upon. And it's got to be protected. And that is something that the Republicans and more Americans now are cognizant of and excited about. And that's why the Democrats have nobody. I mean, I don't even understand how this party lasted this long. I don't even understand. Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris has signed now with the CAA agency. This is the same agency that signed Joe Biden just a couple of weeks ago. Kamala Harris, I guess her plan is probably to run for governor of California. I imagine that's going to be the next step for her. She already is. They've been polling, and she apparently has a strong lead, which is really bizarre. She has a strong lead in the governorship or the gubernatorial race in California. And so she signed with the CAA agency, and she is going to, I guess, do speaking engagements, which I'm going to be honest with you. I thought whoever was booking speaking engagements for Joe Biden had a tough job. But man, I think booking speaking engagements for Kamala Harris would be even more difficult. Harris will join former President Joe Biden, whose CAA deal was announced just 2 weeks ago. Biden was also represented by the agency before entering the White House. Announcing Biden's reaffiliation with the agency on February 3rd, CAA co-chairman Richard Lovett called him one of America's most respected and influential voices in national and global affairs. During the partnership with CAA, Biden released his memoir, Promise Me Dad, in 2017, as well as traveled across the country on his post-vice presidency American Promise speaking tour. In terms of Harris's post-vice presidency, she has kept a relatively low profile since leaving office on January 20th. Over the weekend, she was spotted in New York City, where she attended Broadway shows. The Democrat was recently mocked online for a word salad speech she delivered to the performers of A Wonderful World. Where there's a vacancy, let's fill it. Let us know that the reality is that the progress of our nation has been about the expansion of rights, not the restriction of rights. We're seeing a U-turn right now for those rights to be maintained, which means we have to be vigilant. It's just the nature of it. This is the woman they're going to send out on speaking gigs. You know what really burns my butt? Really, yeah, I do. I get hired every now and then to come speak at some conference or some to some group or some kind of event. And I love public speaking is one of my favorite things. I love sitting in front of this microphone. I love being on the internet. I love being doing TV, and I enjoyed radio at the time before it was taken over by liberal socialists. But basically, what I love speaking on stage. It's one of my favorite things to do because you get that back and forth with the audience. You can play off of each other. You can see exactly what they're responding to. And I think the audience really enjoys it as well. I've got to get back to more public speaking. If anybody's having an event and you want me to come speak, just hit me up on the DM and we'll work out a deal. I don't have an expensive agent, so yeah, I won't be as much as Kamala Harris. Also, fun fact, I can actually speak. Which is something, again, if Kamala Harris has an agent to book her for speaking engagements, and I don't, there's definitely something wrong. There's definitely something wrong with the world. But look, there's a lot of Democrats who have nothing better to do than go buy a ticket to see Kamala Harris talk about how she will be unburdened by what has been. And that's the world. That's the world we live in. There was something else I wanted to share with you, which kind of made me giggle a little bit. Oh, where is it? Oh, yeah. So, okay. I giggle, but also very, very scary. There was, you may remember this plane crash that we talked. I did a video about it the other day in Toronto, Canada. They're the one they're trying to blame Donald Trump for. In fact, Caroline Leavitt, she just reprimanded Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is trying to attack Donald Trump for the dumbest things. For just the dumbest thing. And yesterday, he was talking about how this plane crash in Canada, a country where Donald Trump is not the president, okay? Donald Trump, not president of Canada. He's not the prime minister of Canada. He's not the governor of the 51st state. He is the president of the United States of America. But Chuck Schumer and a lot of Democrats are trying to blame Donald Trump for what happened in Canada. And Caroline Leavitt said, you know what, we're not having any of that. Here she is on Fox News delivering an epic takedown of Chuck cheese on the raw burger Schumer.
If it was a failure of equipment, or if it was weather, if it was pilot error, if it was something else, and you get the minority leader in the Senate immediately pointing fingers at the president. Your response?
It's incredibly irresponsible for Chuck Schumer to say such a thing when the investigation is still underway. And as you rightfully pointed out, John, this crash unfortunately took place in Canadian airspace with Canadian air traffic controllers overseeing it. And the facts about the FAA are that no air traffic controllers have been let go by Secretary Duffy or this new administration. In fact, Secretary Duffy has put great emphasis on hiring the best and the brightest air traffic controllers who want to be part of the FAA, and President Trump signed a very strong executive order to ensure that the FAA and all federal government agencies are focused on merit and skill-based hiring. We want the best and the brightest, the most competent individuals in positions, especially of public safety at the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and all departments across this federal government so we can best serve the American people. So while Secretary Buttigieg and the Biden administration sat on their hands when it came to aviation safety for 4 years, this administration is taking it seriously and is actively recruiting the best and the brightest to join this very important field.
Okay, so there you go. The pilots or the flight in Canada was a Canadian, like it was landing in Canada. In Canadian airspace. The Canadian air traffic controllers were the one guiding that plane to land. And a lot of folks are saying, you know, there were pretty hefty wind gusts. That plane probably shouldn't have been landing. That plane should have been diverted. But for whatever reason, these Canadians did not divert the plane. And as far as who was flying the plane, as far as the pilots go, well, we got a little bit of information about that too. There was this video, End Wokeness posted this video on X. The plane that crashed in Toronto was a Delta flight operated by Endeavour Air, a small airline obsessed with all-female unmanned flights. And they posted a TikTok video, I guess, with girls flying planes.
Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so. I don't think so. Lift that sky, young bad girls, do it well.
I'll probably get some kind of, I'm going to turn the volume down because I'm probably going to get some kind of copyright thing. But they've got an entire flight crew wearing masks, and they're praising the fact that they have an unmanned flight crew, that it's all women, that there's no male pilot, there's no male co-pilot, there's no male flight attendant, whatever you call them. It's all women. And again, I have to imagine that if you have an all-female flight crew for Endeavor Air, if you have an all-female flight crew, it's not being based on merit. It's being based on DEI practices. It's being based on, hey, we need to make sure we hit our quotas, or wouldn't it be cool if we just hired a bunch of women to fly our planes instead of the most qualified pilot? Now, the most qualified pilot may be a woman, but in this instance, it doesn't appear that that's the case. It appears that this is a company that prides themselves on neglecting to hire men and hiring women in any capacity that they can, as often as they can. And the interesting thing about that is that there was, of course, the tragic helicopter crash into the helicopter crash into the other commuter airliner, the American Airlines airliner coming in from Kansas in DC a couple weeks ago. 67 people died. And we found out later that there was a female helicopter pilot in charge of that flight. We're now finding out. Delta originally said they don't know who their pilots are, which seems kind of weird. I feel like you would know who's piloting your plane. But they haven't yet released the names of the pilot who flew the plane into Toronto, had it crash and flip upside down. We do find out. I'm just checking out here. I'm trying to find something online here that I just looked at. Yeah, there's no official word on who the pilot was, but there may be some instances that there was pilot error and also control tower error, and neither of those are Donald Trump's responsibility. However, the left and the media are going to continue to lie about it and tell you that Donald Trump fired essential personnel at the FAA as part of his DOGE initiative, and that's why these planes crashed. That's why all these horrible things are happening. It's Donald Trump. He's responsible for every bad thing in the world. And Donald Trump's not going to put up with it. Neither is Caroline Leavitt. Neither is Patrick Duffy. Neither is Sean Duffy. Nobody is. That's why the AP has been banned from the White House press room, because they continue to ignore the truth. They continue to defy Donald Trump's executive orders. They continue to print falsehoods, and they will not accept that Donald Trump is president and that his executive orders become law of the land. They refuse to do so. And so Donald Trump has said, okay, great. If you're not going to believe what's reality, if you're going to be devoid of truth, if you're going to misrepresent and misreport on the goings on of my administration, we're not going to give you access. Makes perfect sense to me. It's not censorship. Caroline Leavitt already said this is a privilege, not a right. You are a privilege to be seated here in the press briefing room. It's a privilege to go into the Oval Office and ask the president questions, unfiltered and unfettered. And Donald Trump reiterated that point yesterday at Mar-a-Lago.
Some of the phrases that they want to use are ridiculous, and I think, frankly, they become obsolete, especially in the last 3 weeks, because many things have happened in the last 3 weeks. And I didn't know about that, but I would say that if they want to use certain phrases like that, and I guess some are okay, but many aren't, but the Associated Press just refuses to go with what the law is and what is taking place. It's called the Gulf of America now. It's not called the Gulf of Mexico any longer. I have the right to do it, just like we have the right to do Mount McKinley, and nobody's even challenging that. But only essentially, it's primarily the Associated Press, and I don't know what they're doing, but I just say that we're going to keep them out until such time as they agree that it's the Gulf of America. We're very proud of this country, and we want it to be the Gulf of America. Now, the Associated Press, as you know, has been very, very wrong on the election, on Trump and the treatment of Trump, and other things having to do with Trump and Republicans and conservatives. And they're doing us no favors, and I guess I'm not doing them any favors. That's the way life works. But, thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's the way life works. I don't know if you know this, but that's the way life works. If you refuse to acknowledge my executive power, if you refuse to acknowledge that I'm the duly elected president of the United States of America and I have the power to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, this is something that the entire country has determined is now the way it is. It's the Gulf of America. We have the Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, declaring that all maps and usage points should refer to it as the Gulf of America. We have Google Maps and Apple Maps both showing on their technology the Gulf of America, yet the AP continues to deny the report. And Donald Trump says, well, you're fake news, and we don't need any more fake news. We've already got CNN and NBC in there, and ABC. We don't need any more. We don't need any more fake news. We need people who are going to report accurately on the events of the day. And that apparently is not the AP. Donald Trump also doesn't need the AP because he's got his Truth Social. And he's been doing, I mean, really, for somebody who's as busy as Donald Trump is, I love the fact that he still takes the time to post on Truth Social. And yes, it's not as often as it was during the campaign, but it's still, he's doing a great job. And he posted about Lindsey Graham specifically and the budget. Lindsey Graham proposed a budget. Because, you know, that's what the Senate does. They budget stuff and they vote on it and whatever. Lindsey Graham proposed a budget. And in this budget, Lindsey Graham wanted to continue to fund the war in Ukraine through like 2030 for like 5 more years, which means Lindsey Graham wanted the war to continue for 5 more years. And Donald Trump's like, I don't know if you've not read the news or listened to a report or been online, but we're ending this war now. This war ends soon. There will be no more funding for 5 more years of war in Ukraine. So Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social, the House and Senate are doing a spectacular job of working together as one unified and unbeatable team. However, unlike the Lindsey Graham version of the very important legislation currently being discussed, the House resolution implements my full America First agenda. Everything, not just parts of it. We need both chambers to pass the House budget to kickstart the reconciliation process and move all of our priorities to the concept of one big, beautiful bill. It will, without question, make America great again. And so Lindsey Graham gets name-checked by Donald Trump in his Truth Social post saying, look, we don't need Lindsey Graham's horrible bill. We need one big, beautiful bill. We need the House to vote on this so that we can move forward with reconciliation. Somebody who talked about it was our good friend John Kennedy from Louisiana, who added his own special flair when discussing how this budget should be passed in the Senate and the House.
You know, it is interesting what you're saying, because what have they doubled down on? They doubled down on waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption, which will end up being hundreds of billions, if not more. They doubled down on men and women's sports and doubled down putting the rights of illegal immigrants, including known terrorists, murderers, rapists, cartel members, gang members, over the safety of Americans. That's kind of dumb.
Well, it is. And frankly, it's bad for our country. I mean, it's good for, I'm a Republican, it's good for my party. What I tell my colleagues is just, look, we just need to stay calm. We need to stay calm as a Hindu cow and just go about our work and get our bills passed and let the Democrats be the Democrats. And so far, it's working. You never interfere with your opponent when he's kicking his own ass. So that's what's going on.
I think that is very
calm as a Hindu cow. Because Hindus don't eat beef. So you're calm if you're a cow, and it doesn't matter. Yeah, you never interrupt your enemy when they're kicking their own ass. I think that's Sun Tzu. I don't know if that's a direct quote. I think it was more something like, when your enemy's making a mistake, don't interrupt them, or something like that. But anyway, that's exactly what John Kennedy is telling Sean Hannity the Democrats are doing. We're going to stay calm. We're going to work on this budget. We're going to do our Republican things. We're going to continue making our party great. And we're just going to watch the Democrats continue to implode because they are kicking their own rear ends. They are destroying themselves. And we know that because, according to CNN in that poll, they're losing. The electorate has shifted. Donald Trump has shifted the electorate farther to the right. There's more red states than blue states. There's more Republican voters than Democrat voters. Joe Biden had a +6 majority of Democrats. He squandered that and added 2+ percentage points on top. Donald Trump controls not just the party, but the voting public of the United States of America. And not only that, but the voting public of the United States of America who put Donald Trump into office appreciates what he's doing, approves of what he's doing to the tune of 60%. So more Americans are Republican, more Republicans approve of Donald Trump, and we're 1 month in. This war in Ukraine will end. There'll be peace in the Middle East. We may all get a $5,000 paycheck or a $5,000 check back in our taxes from Doge. I mean, it really is incredible, all of the things that Donald Trump is doing and how amazing he and Elon Musk and the kids wearing the T-shirts have made the United States of America in such a little short period of time.
With his 100 geniuses, he's got some very brilliant young people working for him that dress much worse than him, actually.
Yeah,
they dress in just T-shirts. You wouldn't know they have 180 IQ.
Wait a minute. So
yeah. Anyway, I'm going to start. That's going to be our next T-shirt design. We're going to be like, it's going to be a T-shirt. It's going to say Doge, Doge employee 180 IQ. Anyway, listen, we got to get to the after party here. It's going to kick off in just a minute. So if you've not yet joined the Kayetriot Club, boom, step it up. Maybe there's more fun to be had, but we're going to do it in private. Should tell you that should tell you the kind of fun that we have when we're in private. So head on over to the Kayetriot Club. If you're not a member, it's easy to join. Go to Kayetriots.com. Make sure you join our locals community and then become a supporter. It's $10 a month. 10 measly little dollars a month. It's basically like no dollars a month. That's what you're going to get, that's what you're going to pay rather when you join the Kayetriot Club, and you get all kinds of benefits. Access to the after party. You get free stickers that we will deliver directly to your home. You get a 25% discount, other great content and surprises. The other day we had a surprise interview for our President's Day special. And of course, every dollar that you use to support us goes right back into the show so that we can make your listening and viewing experience even more pleasurable. Speaking of which, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, tell them you want more. Subscribe, like, set the notifications, because we're going to keep coming at you with the truth. We're going to let you know when Donald Trump blasts some foreign leader who's been taking advantage of us, when somebody, steals money from you, or when the president says, you know what, we should write you a big fat check and send it to your house. We want to be the ones that let you know about it, but we can only be the ones that let you know about it if you let whatever platform you're watching know you want us to be the ones to let you know about it. So hit subscribe, hit like, set those notifications, because there's more coming at you every single day. We're 1 month in. We got 47 more months to go of Donald Trump's presidency, and we want to be here every single day, every step of the way, keeping you entertained and informed and enlightened and sharp as a tack. So you will always be ready. You will always be on the offensive, and you will always be ready to fight, so we can save the Republic. All right, the after party starts in 3 minutes.